So, 2023, we've been having this conversation about this idea of going beyond. And so I've challenged you to think about what that means for you spiritually. What would going beyond look like for you in terms of your own spiritual life, your own spiritual practices, your own spiritual understandings? Maybe there's something more that you could look at. And so this year, in 2023, what we're doing is we're taking a journey together. And as we go through this journey, my thinking is, let's do this together in a way that by the end of this year, you'll have gone through this process, this transformative process that can really help in your own transformation, your own growth, your own healing, your own expression, whatever it is that you're looking for when we talk about going beyond. And so in my mind, again, Mike's trying to put all this together in his head with Source, with Spirit, with God. And in my mind, it's the first quarter is going to be about preparation. In other words, we're going to get ready to go on this thing. We might want to talk about what does that look like? What does it feel like? So the first quarter this month, these 3 months, has been about preparation. And then in the second quarter, then we actually start the process, the journey, walking out the front door, and we start diving in. That'll be the second quarter of the year. The third quarter is going to be integration, because it's great when we learn all this stuff, but unless you walk out the front door and actually start applying it to your life, what good is it? What does knowledge do without the expression of it? What does it do when it's not integrated? And for some people, that's what happens, is they have tremendous book knowledge, but they don't have any practical experience. They don't implement it. They don't integrate it into your life. Knowledge without integration is entertainment, okay? I hope, I like entertaining. Entertaining's fun. Nothing wrong with entertaining. But when it comes to your own spiritual expression, your own connection, your own healing, your own transformation, it's integration, folks. Because if we don't integrate it, we're not doing anything. We're being entertained. And then finally, it's the expression. Because to me, in my opinion, in my experience, it's each and every one of us has this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful expression of the divine that's coming through you. It flows through you. We get to be expression of that. And it's all unique. Every single one of us do it uniquely. And they're all beautiful. And so we've got this cycle. We've got the cycle that continues to go around and round and round. Some of you people have already started the journey with us. So a couple weeks ago, the board got together and went on a retreat. It was a lot of fun. We got to know each other. We got to break bread together. We got to hang out, talk about all these beautiful plans for the new year. That's exciting. Some people have joined our spirit group. Susan's running a beautiful spirit group called The Power Up. It's about a book about the 12 powers. For those new to Unity, there is this concept, this idea that we have 12 powers that we have access to. And, well, there they are. Thank you, Sarah. So that's a beautiful group that you can join. Some people have joined into a book called The Way of Mastery. It just started. We're just getting started with that. That is a year-long deep dive. Holy cow. It's a big one, but it's beautiful. Some people have done that. And then some people are joining us for the new member class for the people that want to know a little bit more about what is this thing called Unity? Where did it come from? How did it start? Who are the people? What is all this stuff, right? And so we've got several different ways that you can get involved in your own journey and what that may look like. But here's the thing. Everybody does it differently. I'm going to continuously tell you that. Everybody does it differently. So if you're hanging out going like, well, this sounds great, Mike, but I'm really not sure, do me a favor. Would you call me, please? And maybe you and I sit down and have a chat. And between the two of us and God, maybe we could figure out what feels good for you. Because it's all different. It's all different. And it looks different, right? So again, going beyond. What does that look like for you? What does it feel like? Where are you being called? And the last time I got up in front of the group, we talked about this idea of using a piece that has been handed down through the indigenous cultures. This idea that's taken from some of the Native American traditions, some of the Aboriginal traditions, some of the Celtic traditions. And it's fascinating when you start to look at it because they all had this idea of something that's called a medicine wheel. And when you really start to look at it, it's fascinating. How did all of these cultures come up with this idea of a medicine wheel? And so today, we're going to start going a little bit deeper into that so you get an understanding of the medicine wheel and why you can start to use that as just a reference point. And it's going to take me a few minutes to get through it. And I've got some really super high-tech pointing devices here because we realize that my laser pointer doesn't work when you point it at the screen. So here we go. I feel like Harry Potter in the boom, right? Awesome. So we've got this medicine wheel, and there's a couple things. And by the way, I'm just going to share this with you because there's so many different traditions with the medicine wheel. They all have a little bit of a different version. I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't my favorite graphic, but it's the only one that I could find for the moment. I'm going to be creating my own. But this gives you a good understanding of where we can start to have the conversation about the medicine wheel and why it's so powerful, okay? So, first of all, in the medicine wheel, if you look at this, you can tell, number one, you've got 4 sections of the medicine wheel. And each one of the sections has a direction. So, we have north, east, south, and west, right? The second thing I want to point out to you is that each one of the directions has a body. In some of the Native American traditions, they'll call it a shield. For those of you that have studied this, sometimes you'll hear something called the 4 shields. Anybody ever hear the 4 shields? Yeah. So it's the 4 shields or the 4 directions, right? So if we look at it, we've got the mental body, the spiritual body, the physical body, and the emotional body, right? The next thing I want to just talk about is I'm not going to worry about the different types of, these are just the different sage and tobacco, et cetera, and stuff like that, because they're so different in the traditions. But again, it gives you an idea that there's something else that goes along with this thing. The next thing I want to talk about is the time of year. So we've got spring, summer, fall, and winter, right? The other thing that I'm going to add to this is they also have a different time of day. It's not on this chart, but this would be morning, this would be afternoon, this would be sunset, and this would be night. All right? So, I also want to point out something that's super, super, super important that's not on here. But how many people have heard about something called the rites of passage? The rites of passage? Yeah, it's a fairly common concept. Well, in between each one of these lines, if you will, these diagonal lines, is considered a rite of passage. For example, when we go from winter into spring, this line right here is death. When we go from spring into summer, this line right here is birth. When we go from summer into fall, this line right here is puberty. And when we go from this line here, when we go from basically being an adolescent to an elder, that is called the initiation. Another thing that we talk about is representing a time of life. So when we look at life, again, we're talking about this idea of being spirit, then we come into a body, and then we go into, and we become, this is when we're young, when we're very, very young, our youth. Then we go into adolescence, and then we wind up being an adult or the elder, okay? So there's a lot of moving parts with the wheel, but it also represents this idea of how life is a cycle. So it's fairly easy to look at this and go, oh, I get it. It's about a cycle. And it's not just a life cycle. It's so easy to look at that and go, oh, I get it. It's about life. You can see where, let's see, over here I'm kind of hanging out in spirit, and then I'm born, and I'm hanging out, and I'm a little person, and then I start studying into adolescence, and I'm hanging out, and then I grow up, and I become an adult. That's one way to look at it. But the other thing that's fascinating about it is nature works in cycles. And if you start to observe that, you can also understand, think about this. Think about this idea this thought, when you want to create something in your life, where does it start? It starts right here. It starts in the east. It starts with the idea. That's where it starts. And so as we start to play with this idea, this concept, and it's going to take a minute for it to settle in, so don't think you have to understand this. I don't want this to become too heavy or too much. But it's just this idea that we're going to play with this thought, that there's a cycle, that nature has it, and all the indigenous people picked up on this, and they thought it was really, really important. And so the other thing I want to talk about that this represents, and this is the part that grabbed me, and it fascinated me when I started studying this, is this idea of balance. Here's the thing. This wheel represents all of us. We all have different parts of us, right? You've got the spiritual body, you've got the physical body, you've got the emotional body, you've got the mental body. In this tradition, if you're not in balance, in other words, if you're not making sure that everything's okay with each one of those bodies, you get out of balance. And by using this as a reference point and checking on the different parts of you, that's what you do to try to stay in balance. So that's the whole thing with using a medicine wheel, is you're always looking at these different parts of us. So when you look at these different things, you understand that some of us are more comfortable in certain parts of the medicine wheel than others, and therefore we ignore those other parts, right? For example, I'm going to talk today, we're going to do this in a minute, but I'm going to talk about the spiritual body, the east, the spring. But sometimes if you get too spiritual, then what happens? Well, in some cases, it can lead to spiritual bypassing. Or anybody know anybody that's so spiritual that they're no earthly good? I know a few of those people. Seriously, they might as well just go sit in Tibet and meditate all day long, and because they're not any physically good, they just sit there. And so in that case, you can take these things to an extreme. Just like down here when we talk about the physical body. How many people know people that are so interested in taking care of their physical body? That's all it is. It's all about me, 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 me. That's it. And they become very egocentric because it's all, after all, it's all about me. In some cases, to the extreme, it can become very narcissistic, right? Emotional, the emotional body. Those people that get way out of balance with their emotional body and don't pay attention to any of the other bodies, what happens? They go so deep into their own stuff that can become where they stay. How many people know people that have been in therapy their entire life and it doesn't seem like very much has changed? There's no judgment. None. There's no judgment there. None, but it happens, right? They become stuck. In some cases, they become victims. They get stuck in victim mentality, and in some cases can lead to depression, right? And again, there's no judgment there, none. And then the mental body. And this idea where everything becomes in their head. In some cases, they are brilliant, but their mental body causes them to become completely disconnected from their heart and their soul and their spirit. And so the explanation here is just to share with you this idea that when you use the medicine wheel and you use all four parts of it and you start looking at your own life, you start to look and go, well, where's my preference? I can tell you for a long time, I hung out here. And again, we're going to talk about this one in just a second and go into depth. And by the way, over the next few talks, I'm going to be going into depth in each one of these. But for me, I hung out here for a long, long time, and I had a tendency to ignore this. I didn't want to deal with my emotions because I didn't know how to connect. I ignored my feelings. I ignored everything about that, right? And so as a result, I could spiritually bypass. I was really good at it. And in addition to that, I had a very hard time getting in touch with my feelings. Anybody ever been there? Boom. I think every man's hand should be up right now. If not, you are so disconnected. It's okay. It's all right, right? And so that's what it's about. So it's just using this frame of reference to look at your own life and go, where is my tendency? Which one of these bodies, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, where am I comfortable, and which ones may I not be paying attention to? Might not be a bad idea to look at those areas in your life, because we need all of them. All of them when you're healthy, all of them when you're connected, and they all serve a purpose, right? So, let's talk about the East. That's the one I really want to spend time on today. The East, that's the spiritual body. Hey folks, guess what? That is Unity's wheelhouse. Spirituality, that is what we do here. We're really, 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 really good at it. It's a spiritual body. Now, understand something, that in the East, nothing is physical. It's spirit. So we're standing here and we're not even born yet, but it's this idea, these thoughts are coming in. We're in spirit. It's the spring. Think about the sunrise. Anybody ever watch the sunrise? What is the one thing about the sunrise? It's changing, but it's incredibly peaceful. If you've ever watched a sunrise, it is just silence. As you watch this thing comes up, it's a magical moment. It's quiet. But you know there's something coming. You can feel it. The energy of it is incredible to watch the sunrise. As we sit there and play with this idea, this thought about the East, the spring, the spiritual body, it's this idea where stuff starts in spirit. That's where it starts. Everything to us starts in the spirit. If you go back into some of the Unity traditions, we talk about the Fillmores. The Fillmores called it substance. According to the Fillmores and others, there's this idea called spiritual substance that's around us all the time. I loved when I went through the ministerial program, they talked about this idea of spiritual Play-Doh. I love that, right? It's this idea that you can take this stuff called substance and you can form it. Why? Because of who and what you are. You're a powerful creator. And you can create what you want to out of the spiritual substance. It's what the entire New Thought movement was based off of. This idea that you actually have a say of what shows up in your life. You can actually do something about it. You got to use some tools. There's stuff you got to do to happen, but you can do something about it. And so the spiritual Play-Doh. Metaphysically, what we taught, the saying is, the divine idea of the underlying reality of all things. Substance is everywhere present, pervades all things, and inspires us to take action. It underlines all manifestation and is the spiritual essence, the living energy out of which everything is made. Everything starts off as an idea. Everything. Through substance, all the attributes of being are expressed. All of them. It sustains and enriches any idea that is projected unto it. I'm going to say that again. It's really, really, really important. It sustains and enriches any idea that is projected onto it. In other words, it can't do anything unless it's directed. It's got to be directed. Guess who gets to direct it? Huh? Yeah, we do. When you understand that, you really can start to play with this stuff called spiritual Play-Doh and create some really cool things in your life. You can do that, right? Charles Fillmore said, when we commune with spirit within and ask for new ideas, they are always forthcoming. In other words, there is limitless spiritual Play-Doh. It's limitless. Let us begin to concentrate on this inner spiritual Play-Doh, this person that produces these things, right? I want you to think about for just a second. I want you to think about this church, the structure, this building that we're in. How did all of that start? For those of you that don't know, I'm going to tell you. It started off with a conversation that happened between Chuck and myself. Hey, what would happen if we thought about bringing the two churches together and going from there? It was an idea. It was a thought. That's how everything starts, is in the mind, in spirit. That's where it starts, right? So as we start to understand this idea, the spiritual stuff, the stuff that we at Unity love to play with, talk about it. But like I said, each one of these areas, each one of these bodies has the good stuff, the powerful stuff, the amazing stuff, but it also has the negative side that I've already kind of mentioned. And they call that, when I talk about the 4 shields, they also have something called the exaggerated shield, or what happens when you take it too far. Every single one of them has that. So in the East, the spiritual shield, you can start to take it to the extreme. What does it look like? Fundamentalism. You can become very black and white. No, 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 there's only one way. There's only one way, and this is the way. And don't you ever think about going outside of this way, because that's the way it's got to be. That's an extreme, right? It's very structured, excuse me. In the same breath, we can get really woo-woo, and that's where we start becoming no earthly good, right? So every single one of these shields has to the extreme, and just there needs to be a balance in all of it, right? So the spring is spirit. It's this time when we're not even in physical form yet. It's this idea of thought that we begin there, and that's where the journey starts. Some practices that can help you along your own journey from the spiritual standpoint. Okay, Unity people, could you help me out? Because I'm struggling trying to think, what might be some spiritual practices that might be helpful for somebody? What do we got? Meditation. Prayer. Thank you. What's that? Affirmations. Yes, yes, yes. Attitude. Love it. Oh, gratitude. Thank you. Yes. Literally. Thank you. Denials. Yes. Yes. Yep. Beautiful. Thank you. You showed up. You get the star. All of you get the star for the day, right? So it's this idea. Some other ones I threw in here. Breath work. I'm a huge fan of breath work. How about grounding? How about go putting your feet on Mother Earth and just standing outside for 10 minutes a day? Huge, hugely important. How about journaling? Might not be a bad idea to think about that to help you process some of the emotional stuff. Yeah, so we've got all these practices to help us in that shield. So, having said that, today's talk is going to be a little bit short because we got a lot of stuff to do today. So, as we start to process this year, I'm going to go back to this idea about this journey, this thought, this idea of actually moving yourself forward in your own spiritual development and your spiritual growth. And by the way, yes, you can do that. And by the way, you have a way that's different than any other way on how to do that. It is, and you know where it's at? It's not anywhere out here. Watch. It's in your heart. And when you slow down enough, and you remember who you are, and you listen, guess what? Spirit shows up and goes, hey, there might be this book over here you might want to check out. Maybe you might want to go have a talk with Mike. Maybe you want to learn how to do some breath work. Maybe you want to sing. Maybe you want to draw. Maybe you want to heal. Maybe you want to jump into the way of mastery. I don't know what it looks like for you. But as we go through this process, you're going to be exposed to a lot of different things this year. And my hope and prayer for you is that you figure out what you need to do, more importantly, what you want to do from the standpoint of your own spiritual growth and development and your awakening and your return home. Because guess what, folks? That's where we are all going. We are all going back to spirit. We are all going back home. We're all doing it a little bit differently. How wonderful it is to come together with a group like this and say, come join me. Can I take your hand? Can I give you a hug when you need a hug? Can I let you cry when you need to cry? Can we laugh together when we want to laugh together? But we do it together. And I get to go, hey, what does it look like for you? Because it's a little bit different for me. And we don't judge each other. We respect each other. We honor each other. We help each other. We hold each other. And that's what this journey is all about. So, put your seatbelts on. Maybe do something that you've never done before and say, this is the year when I'm really going to do it. I'm really going to do a little bit of a deeper dive. And again, I'll say this all the time. I don't care where you're at in your own spiritual journey. There's always more. Always more. We're peeling the layers of the onion. There's always, always, always more. Right? Whew. I had to get through that quick. How's everybody doing? You okay? All right, good. I always like to check in. You're brilliant, brilliant in your divinity. Thank you so much for sharing who and what you are with us. I'm honored. I'm blown away. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world, because I get to hang out with you folks. I just want you to know how grateful I really, really am for each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.